Welcome back inside the Nebraska Soybean Board studio as we take a look at today's agriculture news. On Mondays, we like to catch up on the markets with Jeff Peterson, who's the president of Heartland Farm Partners. To begin this week's conversation, we talked about harvest, specifically how the yield is coming in and progress so far.
You know, harvest is getting off to a good start. It's interesting though, Bryce. We've got some guys that are moving right along, and honestly, if the rains would stay away later this week, they'd probably finish up on soybeans. But we have other individuals that have, just barely got started or thinking about getting started. I think a general trend though would be here in the western corn belt. So if we'd say, take Iowa, take Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, overall I think yields are probably just a little bit better than what was expected. Now that isn't the case on each and every field, but that's kind of what we're feeling. But in the eastern corn belt though, it actually is just the opposite. Now they were looking for some record type yields, and it just isn't quite coming in that way. So they've, their yields are off from where they were. Harvest progress is moving along. Report out, this afternoon. We'd expect to see probably corn and beans somewhere around about that 18% harvested level, and that's not going full speed yet by no means. On the corn side, that would be up about 8% from last week. And when we start getting running really heavy and get everybody switched over, we ought to see 15, 20% a week. And on beans, that'd be about a 12% improvement. What we're going to find later in the week, we're going to have some rains that are going to come. That's going to slow things up. That's probably going to give us a little bit of firmness to the basis as we go forward. And overall, the basis is holding in pretty well.
Let me ask this, Jeff. How important is that crop progress report each Monday? Is it something you just monitor to see how things are going, or does it actually impact how the markets are trading?
Yeah, a couple pieces to that. So I believe that it is from the crop progress side or from the harvest progress side. It's a good indicator to just watch how things are moving along. Does it impact the market a lot? Probably not too much. Unless we get the extremes, unless we're extremely fast on harvest or it's just moving along really slow. And then the good to excellent rating starts losing its significance, but it still at least gives us a way to be able to kind of gauge and say, what do we think on the yields here? We'll see some funny changes happen, but we still like to monitor it just to kind of give us a feel of what everybody is actually seeing out there.
Speaking of monitoring things, still keeping an eye on South America. What's the weather been like down there?
South America, it's interesting. We're getting closer and closer to having confirmation on La Nina. As we'd expect, they're starting soybean planting, but it's going along very slow. They need some more rains in the northern part, and I think they'll get them. It's not uncommon for this year or for this time of year not to have the monsoon quite kick in yet. So they're working on getting some more rain, but soybean progress is slow, but not slow to the point it's a concern yet. And the planting on the corn side, that first corn crop, that one, that's raised further south in Brazil, that one actually is moving along pretty well, probably the upper 27 to maybe 30% complete. So overall, that's what we're seeing there. With the La Nina setup, kind of what we're thinking is that we'll still expect to probably see some dryness in southern Brazil and over into Argentina. So we'll have to keep a close eye on them going forward.
Okay, this week quarterly stocks is due. Remind our viewers what that report tells you and how that's created.
Yeah, so in the quarterly stocks report, what's really always interesting about that, especially in the September one here, is that that's USDA, in particular NASS. What they're attempting to do is through surveys determine how much grain was left on the farm. The way they do that is they survey the farmers, ask them what they've got left out there, and then on the commercial grain traders, they also send out the reports to them, and usually they're getting 85 to 90% of the grain facilities are reporting, and so they're trying to physically ask how many stocks they have on the corn, beans, wheat, all the commodities. Now, why that's important is that early in the month we got the WASDE report, and that gave us an estimation of where the ending stocks would have been on September 1st. And so as a result of that, what we're able to compare to the quarterly stocks report that comes out this week will also say where do we think stocks were on September 1st. So that'll give us a way to actually ground truth how were the estimates based on paper compared to the estimates based on surveys.
What are your expectations for that report? Any early looks at that?
Yeah, so we're kind of thinking stocks are going to come in, if anything, maybe a little bit tighter than what USDA was saying in the WASDE report. The only reason we believe that, Bryce, is because as we looked at the basis levels, basis has been extremely tight on corn and also been very good on soybeans. And that usually indicates to us that ultimately stocks are tight out there in the country, especially on the corn side. And as a result of that, we'd say that that lines up pretty well with the stock estimates that we saw in the WASDE report. So we think the two are going to come very close, if anything, a little bit tighter than what the WASDE was showing.
That is Jeff Peterson, the president of Heartland Farm Partners. I'm Bryce Huskett reporting inside the Nebraska Soybean Board studio.